all for coming. It's a good topic, I can see. Today we've asked Hampton Watkins and David Golden, who are part of the Wastewater Citizens Advisory Group, to come and see what we're thinking about and where we're getting with the town's efforts to address some of the concerns regarding the impact of, am I saying that?
Nitrate, other
load, all sorts of water issues.
Yeah.
Okay. So, David, I think, would you like to start?
Yeah. So
thank you for coming.
Thank you, folks, for having us here today. My name is Dave Golden. I'm a member of the Select Board, and I'm the chair of the Groundwater Wastewater Discharge Citizens Advisory Committee. I'm going to start by, I know there are a number of members here. Rose Forbes, Hampton Watkins, myself. I saw Marty Enos at some point. There's Marty. Is anyone else here? I don't think so. We did post this as a meeting, so since 4 o'clock has come and gone, the March 2nd meeting of the Citizens Advisory Committee to be open. And then I'm going to just give you folks a little bit of information about our process so far. So for the committee members who are here, if you've seen any of my work on the Board of Health prior to my time on the Select Board, the way that these informational sessions work is that you're here to hear, not here to speak yourselves. So although some of you are vested in this process, either as landowners or business owners, it's asked that you use this as a listening session rather than a speaking session. So today I'm going to go through the sort of the timeline for the Citizens Advisory Committee, and then being a lowly administrator, really a science aficionado, I've asked my right hand, Hampton Watkins, here to explain the science a little more in depth to you folks. Means of background. This committee really sort of originated, as you know, in this room. A number of folks brought concerns forward. The change in a permitting process at the wastewater facility out on Camelot Drive. But up here, he'll tell you a little bit more about the map. But as you can see, it's fairly close to your neighborhood, but it's also close to the Eel River, the Eel Water Watershed. So you folks, I think might have even been, was that the genesis of the Sundays at the Barn? The concerns. So you brought it forward to the Select Board. The Select Board said, you know, we'll put a panel together as we've done in the past, get some citizens together to make recommendations to us to move forward with this permitting process. And I'm, like I said, I'm going to leave most of the science up to Hampton, but right now what we see is that the bulk of the right now goes into the harbor. What this permit change would do would be to allow it to go into the infiltration beds rather than into So in 2024, in June, the Select Board appointed 6 members: Hampton, Rose, Marty, myself. Well, actually, I was in July, but Mark Champagne, who lives nearby, Josh Bowes, and Bill Doyle, who's a commercial shell fisherman. In July, I was appointed to be the chair of the committee. I started doing some meetings with the folks in engineering and the wastewater division to get a handle on what happened in the past, where we were going, what the town was hoping to do with this re-permitting process. In August, we began meeting. Our first meeting was at the end of August. We reorganized. Hampton became the vice chair. Rose became our clerk. At that point, we really just started talking about what the scope of our work was going to be. So really at the end of this, what we need to do is to recommend to the Select Board this change in the permits. So that, again, the change would be to transfer the bulk of discharge from the harbor into the infiltration beds. Right now, it's about 1.7 million gallons per day that are
that's the permitted level,
and about 80% of that is going through the outfall pipe. We don't want to change. We don't want to get rid of the outfall pipe, but the town doesn't want to get rid of the outfall pipe. They want to keep that for emergency purposes. They want to change the sort of 80-20 split with an increased load into the beds. So that's really what the final product of our group will be to say to the select board, yes, you should pursue this, or no, you shouldn't pursue this, or perhaps yes, you should pursue it, but here are the other things that we recommend you do. The Eel River Watershed and ultimately our aquifer stay protected. In September, we met with Horsley Witten, working on our permitting application. In October, we did a tour of the wastewater treatment plant. Doug Pinard led that tour. Doug is our Kendra Martin also joined us on that. She's the wastewater and water engineer for the town. I should let you know that Doug and Kendra have both either both or one or the other has attended every meeting that we've had from the town and answer questions that the committee has as we go through our work. In November, we received a presentation from Weston. This presentation more like sort of a 100,000-foot view of what's going on with wastewater in the town of Plymouth, and for them to talk a little bit more about a concurrent project which is the comprehensive wastewater master planning process. So while we're doing this deep dive into a single issue for the select board, the wastewater division is also working on a master planning process to say this is the direction we should go with wastewater treatment in the community. Things like looking at public-private partnerships with private treatment facilities in town, development of satellite in the future. So I think between this and the comprehensive wastewater master planning process, we're getting ahead of it. We benefit from the experience of the Cape. So we'll be able to make some proactive decisions in order to make sure that Plymouth is protected. So I'm happy to take questions right now, but I'd rather, if it's all right with folks, to have Hampton come up and talk a little bit more about the science, and then he and I can sort of bounce back and forth with their questions. Does that work for everyone? Very good. Without further ado.
Thank you, Dave. And thank you, Mark, and for hosting the meeting. We appreciate this. I've been to, I think this is my third meeting here at the barn. And it's always interesting because there are a wide variety of folks and interesting opinions expressed. So thank you. What I put up on the screen right now is just a sense. I mean, I'm a very visual person. This these are the infiltration beds, and this is the sewage treatment plant, the waste treatment plant at Camelot Park, and you can see the Camelot Drive going through here, and up here is where the DEP is. Park in the area is the location of the Balboni wind turbine here. We're back over here in the woods in Cedarville, and the Eel River, or at least a portion of it, starts back here in Camelot Park, goes past the base of the wind turbine through wetlands. There's a pond back in here, and it makes its way into Russell Mill Pond. The other branch of the upper Eel River Basin starts off back in Great South and Boot Pond area, comes through the Eel River proper along that path and into the other branch of Russell Mill Pond. The dam is here. The water makes its way into the ponds and then into the lower Eel River Basin. A contributing other piece is right outside here to the south of us, and it joins up, and the basin flows on underneath the highway extension past the museum into the basin there, and then down into the southernmost end of the harbor right there at the beginning of Long Beach and behind the Eel River Club. So that's what we're looking at. And I throw this up just for geographic reference and context. I'm going to go through a lot of different material that we have heard as members of the Citizens Advisory Committee from various individuals through the course of the past months. Some of it is, we have identified gaps in the information that we have, and we're going to be requesting more information. One of the things that we're waiting on right now is the state process is, if you want to make a change, you have to go and get what's called initially, you might try and do an extended environmental notification form, ENF. That was submitted back in October, November, to the Mass Environmental Protection Act folks who evaluate these sorts of things at DEP. They looked at it, they read it, and as Dave said, you're using old data, you're not being as thorough and complete as you need to be. Let's go ahead and do what's called an environmental impact report, an EIR. The way that works is the engineers typically who are hired to do the original continue on the work. They do more modeling, more evaluation, more data collection, more recent information put into the modeling and the projections and so on. And then they use that to make a new set of recommendations. And this is really on what are the alternatives that we see in providing good solutions for potential environmental problems. So what we're looking at is, how do we make sure that we have a minimum of impact and a maximum of benefit? And part of that is, you can do anything. We could put a reverse osmosis facility in the plant, but that's enormously costly. So how do you go about balancing the cost benefit with uncertainty in the process? So it's a matter of risk management, mitigating risks where we can, and acknowledging up front, we don't know everything. We don't know everything. The world is imperfect, and it is in many ways getting more challenging all the time. So what we're trying to do is evaluate degrees of uncertainty, what the risk profiles are. You hear, and we'll mention it, PFOS, PFAS, these forever chemicals. Clue in. We all have them in our body today. That was what was discovered when they were first looked for amongst the 3M workers and who were involved in the manufacture. They looked for these chemicals to see, and then they started looking elsewhere. And everyone that they tested, people who had no involvement here and there. So we're gonna do the best that we can. Now, can we look at alternatives? Yeah, that's what the whole process is about. What are we gonna do for alternatives? Just, and I'm not a risk manager. I've been trained in the sciences. I've got a bachelor's in chemistry, a master's in geology, a doctorate in planetary sciences, and all of the coursework needed for another master's in environmental management. So I've done my homework. I've gotten to know things that I never imagined I'd know, like the mounding of groundwater above the water table from introduction into a facility like this. And one of the things that we need to do is not think that this is a simple problem, but it's a multifaceted sort of chess game almost that we're playing, that is something that we need to look at all of the factors involved. The thing that I want to hop over to, if I can, this is on Google Maps. This is from a map of the ENF, or a portion of a map out of the EENF. This simply,
and the EEMF stands for?
the Extended Environmental Notification Form.
Expanded.
Expanded?
Yes, that's the first E. Expanded environmental notification.
Thank you.
Sure.
Rather than extended, expanded. I stand corrected. I'm not a regulator. I'm not involved in that world. What you see here, there are a series of computer models that are used nowadays to model groundwater flow. And thankfully, we are in a very conductive soil type. This glacial sand that Plymouth has been built on is causing all sorts of other angst in other ways in town nowadays. But what it does is it allows for water to flow very readily through the subsurface. You hear about the water table. The water table is the top of the zone where groundwater flows, and it's recharged by precipitation, rain, snow, snowmelt, and so on, going into the surface, percolating through the leaf litter and everything that's been built up on top of the sand, down into the subsurface, where it then gets down to a point where you're saturated. And if just like you would imagine a marble rolling downhill, if you put water into the ground, it seeks the locally best path, the easiest path of travel to lower levels. It flows like a river, if you will, on the surface, only it flows in all directions underground, unless there's something like a clay layer that would impede its flow. That is very low conductivity, and it would then, there are certain things that would happen. But here we're modeling the subsurface, and this is done by Horsley Witten, of the water, and you can see something interesting. You can see the flow lines moving away from the plant, and then generally, even down here, bending toward the ocean. What's going on, and these are the highways. Several things I wanted to point out in this map. Here is the wetland area. Here's where the pond is, and it's on the side of that the mast of the tower is, it's not exactly, but it's close by. The tower there with the wind turbine on it. These are the 5 infiltration beds. They're not small. They're roughly the size of a football field each. We as a committee went out and had a tour of the plant and looked at the beds behind the plant. It's down here along the Eel River going toward the Russell Mill Pond that what will happen is a lot of the near surface flow will be entrained into the groundwater as it comes down toward Warren Wells Brook. This other remains underground, and you can see the contours, and these contour lines are feet above sea level. starts out at 70, 72 at the plant, and then moves out, and you can think of the way that these contours are drawn are perpendicular to the flow lines in the flow field. We think of the aquifer as a big mound of underground water, fresh water. And it's always flowing toward the ocean, towards sea level. And eventually it gets out to a zone where it mixes with the salt water underneath the substrate below the ocean surface. And it carries with it the materials that are dissolved in the water. So you're going to be layering on top of the existing aquifer another mound of water, and the difference, this is where I don't want to get too technical, but the rainwater has got very few dissolved solids in it. Currently, one of the things that we're permitted to go up to is 1 gram per milliliter of dissolved solids. And it's thought that might be coming in as in the historically, where the pipes went under the harbor, and we're now moving them to Water Street. So that might be something a problem that we're fixing, but down into less dense water, sort of thinking about a turnover. And so what you're looking at is more dense water being laid on water, so there would be a mixing zone at the bottom where the less dense water would try and displace the more dense water would try and displace the less dense water and descend into the top of the aquifer. My point here is that you can just readily tell that the way that this has been modeled, the flow field is off and then directed toward the coast. I only wish that we had a larger image of the flow field to demonstrate what other portions, but you can clearly see that a lot of this flow would be directed down toward Russell Mill and then off toward the area that we're in, toward Chiltonville. So as I stated, the water is carrying any nutrients, and that is primarily the limiting nutrients are nitrate or available nitrogen. By the time it comes out of the sewage treatment plant, the vast majority, ammonia-related, urea, ammonia, nitrates have been oxidized to nitrate, or nitrogen compounds have been oxidized. And right now, we are well within the permitted limits for the discharge out into the harbor. I'll swing back around in a little while to talk about the harbor discharge. What we're doing at this point is looking at, okay, if we do disposal in the beds, and this is by the way, the diagram here is modeled at the full 3 million gallons a day, which is what the plant is rated for on a continuous basis. What it doesn't include, and this is to do with the nutrients, is that it doesn't have I just lost my train of thought. It doesn't have
the ramp up.
Yeah, the ramp up from where we are now with very little being discharged into the beds to the point at which we're going to be proposed to dispose of 3 million gallons a day. What this does show, and I think it's important to note, is the range of wells. These black dots are test wells that are already in place in the vicinity of the plant, downstream from the point of infiltration, and there's even one that's well upstream. But the majority of them are downstream. What was included in the EENF was the addition of 8 new test wells on the way down toward the Warren Wells Brook and the upstream of the Warren Wells Brook. Those would be used as monitoring wells to see what sort of concentration of nitrate, which is the one nutrient. The other nutrient that is of concern, particularly in freshwater environments, is phosphate, or available phosphorus. Those are the two that are of concern. The phosphorus entering the Eel River Basin and the surface waters of the Eel River Basin, both of those would promote a process that's a natural long-term process called eutrophication. Think of it as overfeeding your favorite pet dog and it getting to be my size. But it's that kind of process. It also sets to a point to the imbalance of natural nutrient loading in the waters. So those are some of the things that are being proposed. Let me see if I can bring up one more.
Excuse me. Can I ask a question before you move off that slide?
Sure.
Awesome. I'm not sure whether or not I heard you correctly, but you said that this is a model that does not show the predicted or the potential 3 million gallons a day flow?
No, it does.
It does.
This
Okay.
is the 3 million gallons per day.
Okay, that wasn't clear to me. That's
Yeah,
what I
and
wanted to ask.
one of the things that I will say is that as you get this mounding on top of the existing aquifer, which is really represented by these green lines on the diagram, and what you want to do from a mechanical perspective, for example, is make sure, and there has been at least one septic system that has been identified in the EENF process. You want to make sure that you don't raise the top level of the aquifer to the point that it would flood existing septic systems. And that is something that's already been identified in one instance at least, may have more impact, and when we do modeling, but that's at the full 3 million gallons a day. Right now, we're running well below that. I think the average day output of the plant is about 1.5 million, maybe slightly more, but it bounces depending upon what the daily input into the plant is. So those are some of the items.
If I can just interject here.
Sure.
So when we talked about the ramp up, so this is what the plant would be if it was at full capacity, discharging into the infiltration beds. So what we talked about with the MassDEP was that if we were to pursue this permit and it was to be approved, we wouldn't flip it and then suddenly it's all going in the infiltration beds. There'll be a slow ramp up over time for us to be able to do some of these monitoring processes so that we understand the impact as it's actually happening. So that's what.
Can I
Thanks.
just interrupt? Folks sitting around the corner, you're missing out on this film strip. So if you want, there are some chairs
There are
down
chairs here. We're quite informal.
Yeah,
I won't bite anybody.
I'm in.
All right. The other thing that we are taking into consideration is right now, we know that there are on the horizon certain things that are reasons for concern. I mentioned the PFAS and PFOS. Others that are things that we don't think twice about dumping into the waste stream are the likes of pharmaceuticals. I'm an old guy, I take a fistful of pills every day. And most of those go right through me and right into the when I flush. And so it is, what are the impacts of those on the environment? We don't know. There are folks who are studying that, but often it's a decade or two between having solid science and having regulation that manages the risk of what we learn. So there are things that, like I said, we could clean up the water so that you could drink it coming out of the waste treatment plant. We have a friend who's an astronaut. On board the space station, she was drinking that water because you don't want to haul kilograms and kilograms of water from the surface up to space if you can simply clean it up to the point where it's potable water. So, but that's a very expensive process. And so the thing is, you want to use that as little as possible and depend on natural system services to help clean the water that we do have to use every day. I'll just come out and say it, and we haven't even talked about this, is you want to look toward conserving resources that we use. I mean, if you can keep from pumping it out of the ground and flushing it down the toilet and dumping the waste and processing the waste on the way to dumping it wherever, in the ocean or that's a good thing. I know that there are other things, just I'll step back a little bit, that are going on. One of them is we already have a whole set of smaller packet plants around town. South High School, South Middle School, plant there. Red Brook, a plant there. The nuclear plant, a plant there. Pine Hills, a plant there. The airport, a plant there. These are not huge in size. I think that Red Brook and Pine Hills are probably the largest of the two, supporting a significant population in the community. But the thought is that it might be as part of the larger EIR that more use of those facilities and installation in a more distributed mode around town of those would be a wise thing to do. We haven't seen the EIR, the DEIR yet. We thought that we would have had it by now, but it's available to us until sometime in April.
So just for help, DIR, environmental impact report.
Environmental impact report,
All
there's
right.
multiple kinds, but yeah, just EIR is environmental impact report.
And DIR,
Draft environmental
Draft.
impact report. There's SEIR and FEIR.
Right, and in the process of going from one to the other and then on to permitting, there are plenty of opportunities for citizens' comment. There are often hearings that are held. One of the things that I didn't know about back in when this was originally, the EENF was originally proposed, I wasn't paying attention, so I didn't know that there was a meeting. Else, I would have been at the meeting. I, just for the record, in addition to sitting on the Citizens Advisory Committee here, for my general interest, and this will give some indication of Hampton, I sit on and attend the Wastewater Advisory Committee monthly meeting for the MWRA, where they are serving 2.3 to 2.4 million residents of eastern Massachusetts out of the Deer Island treatment plant on a daily basis. Talk about dwarfing Plymouth. That is a huge, huge undertaking. And one of the things that I've written the executive director of that wastewater to see if we might be able to get a tour of that giant facility. And it truly is I'll say it's one of the engineering marvels in our state. So anyway, going back a little farther, I'm going to click back over to the
Nathan, real quick, sorry.
Whoop.
Can you explain who monitors those wells, the existing ones and the 8 proposed?
Yeah. There are groups that work closely. The plant is now run by a consulting firm called Woodard and Curran. They are responsible for the day-to-day operation of the plant. And they, in effect, work for the town, and Doug Pennard is the head of that part of DEW that does the supervision of Woodard and Curran. These wells, the existing wells, are tested primarily by Woodard and Curran. The surface waters out into the Eel River are tested by David Gould's organization, the Energy and Environment for the town of Plymouth. The environmental technician there is Kim Tower, and Kim has been doing this for as long as I've been interacting with the town, which has been 12, 15 years. I remember her maiden name, so it's a while. And then these wells would be test wells that would also be run by Woodard and Curran, and the results reported to Kendra Martin, who is in the engineering department, and she is the wastewater engineer for the town. And Kim's an environmental technician. Kendra is a PE, I think, chemical engineer. And they're the ones who are looking closely, and I don't know I know that the operators of the plant, the Woodard and Curran folks, are licensed. You have to be a licensed operator to run a wastewater treatment plant.
So I asked that just to demonstrate that there's a fair amount of oversight. It's not, we're not dragging a hose out to these infiltration beds and just opening the valve. There's quite a lot of studying of the water that goes into those, that will go into those beds.
Would that be a conflict of interest that Mr. Gould is in charge of all those people testing all those wells, and there's nobody on the outside testing it?
Mr. Gould is not.
He's not.
But you just said he was.
No, Mr. Gould is testing the waterways, the open flowing waterways and the ponds and so on. They're the ones who are testing the waters of the town, meaning surface water. The wells are being tested by Woodard and Curran,
Who run the plant?
who run the plant.
So there's no third party coming in and.
They're
taking-
published. They're published and reported to DEP.
I didn't say that they weren't published, but I'm just saying it's the same people oversighting, turning in the same water. I don't care where the cells came from, but if no third party is testing any of those wells, the mice are running the show.
I'm not sure that the,
Because I
Yeah,
volunteer the Boy Scouts. Boy Scouts cannot test their own water. The water has to be tested by an outside source.
right,
Have their water tested to see that it's good. Why is the town and the people running the things testing their own water? I guess is my sample. Not that somebody's doing something
It's-
wrong,
yeah.
but there's
No,
no
it's not-
double check.
It's not like they're in a lab in town hall doing this. It's being sent out to the state. It's not simply, they're not scooping it up, going into their office and studying it. They're scooping it up. They're doing a study. They're sending it to the
You
state.
said that the technician's testing the water.
yeah, there is, at the waste treatment plant, there is a lab,
Yeah.
okay? And that's where the testing, to my knowledge, and I may,
No splitting samples, sending them to DEP or to anybody else for outside testing of any of that.
not that I'm aware of, not that I'm aware of.
They're subject to the licensing authority of the state, though.
The other one is, you said the wastewater plant was for 3 million gallons. I would thought
3
it was-
million gallons.
I thought it was 5 million gallons when it was built.
It
And
was-
it had the zero factor for phosphorus.
It was built to handle at an absolute maximum 5 million. That's the absolute maximum, but you never want to run one of these facilities at the absolute.
The best, I thought.
They 3 million would be really, if you wanted to run the plant at sort of optimum, that would be a great number to go for. And like I say, I'm not an operator. I'm more of a chemist and a scientist and so on, who can interpret the numbers. I'd love to learn more about how it. I'll just say that when we as a group toured the plant, Rose Forbes, the PE, and the PhD scientists were the only ones brave enough to go into the poop room. If you go to the plant, there's a room there where they're doing the solid separation from the liquid waste.
Water access.
Yeah, and you want to take a bath after you get out of the room. But it is, Rose is shaking her head, but it is, I want to learn more. So
My other question is, Mr. Golden, the last time he was here, he said he would find out how much they've been already dumping in the beds daily. Because he said it was only a couple thousand gallons, because the trucks were really small, and that's why a bunch of us are here to find out how much they've actually been dumping.
Yeah, so if we're dumping about, if we're discharging about 1.5 million gallons per day, and about 20% of that is going into the beds, you're talking about, is my math right?
You missed my question. You said
Wait,
it's trucking in stuff.
300,000? About
Yeah, but
300,000 gallons per day?
there's a different, no,
How
what,
much were you trucking in to dump into the beds? That's what our question was for
You're-
you last time.
you're not,
That's included in the 1.5 million gallons.
yeah, what,
Okay.
Yeah.
what's going on is septic system pumping is trucked to the facility.
I'm talking about the tractor trailer trucks that are 10,000 gallons that are coming in day and night round the clock
Those,
with main plates and New Hampshire
Yeah,
plates. I'll let Marty go, I'm sorry.
So discharge from the plant is 1.5 million gallons a day.
that's
That's fine.
F.
That includes everything that gets dumped into the plant. It doesn't, the trucks don't dump into the beds, right?
No.
No, they dump into the plant and get treated. So, I mean, that's my understanding, that's Hampton's understanding, Rose's understanding.
Point of clarity, we asked for the numbers from Kendra.
Yep.
And we did get them for the past 4 years. And on average, it was around 100,000 gallons per day coming in via a truck. What we don't have yet is where those trucks came from and what effluent is on board those trucks. Has it been tested? We don't have those answers yet.
Okay.
But we
And
do
just to
have
be
the-
clear, we're probably not gonna get that
And we may
answer,
not get it.
because
You know.
they're not tracking that. I mean, they have, they know the division between what's trucked in and what's not, but there's not necessarily like, they're not putting in an Excel spreadsheet, there was a truck that came from Maine, a truck that came from Rhode Island, like, there's just not,
Or whether it's residential or
yeah, I mean, it's,
Commercial or industrial?
commercial or industrial.
It wasn't delineated out.
it's not delineated at this point, so we might not get that answer.
Do you think we should be doing that? Mr. Scientist in the back with the chemistry background?
The thing is, it is, what we're particularly concerned about is, and I want to be pretty candid here, all sorts of stuff, whether you dump it down the drain here, or probably not here, but, or in the industrial park or whatever goes down the drain ends up in the plant. What we're most interested in is after it's treated, what's coming out of the plant. That's the key. A lot of what is, and I say a lot, that come out of the plant don't get handled here. They are hauled to one of two sites in Rhode Island where they're incinerated. That's another whole kettle of worms. But they're hauled off-site and disposed of elsewhere in I would suspect, an EPA and state licensed facility far away from Plymouth. So it's a matter of, okay, once that's away, what are we doing with what's in the water, and what are we going to do with it? I was going to go on the next map to roughly where the outfall is, but it's beyond the jetty in the harbor, roughly 1,500 feet offshore. That's not quite a third of a mile. 1,760 feet would be a third of a mile. So it is being dumped there, and you'll hear people talk about the dye study that was done many years ago, and the dye essentially just circulating in the harbor space, because there isn't a lot of in and out flushing of the. So I'll say packet to dump beds. There are a number of options that we know are going to be in the final report, the EIR, but
Which packet plants dump in the harbor?
no, the packet plants don't dump in the
But you
harbor.
just said that.
No, I didn't. Sorry. There are packet plants. That's one solution.
Correct.
There is continued dumping in the harbor. That's another possible solution. There's possibly moving to the beds here behind the plant and dumping the majority of the waste on a daily basis into those beds. There may be other solutions, other alternatives that are presented in the draft EIR and subsequently worked into the EIR, and that will take time to work through that process. And we need information. We've asked for a whole bunch of information. Some of it can be arrived at readily. Others, we may not get what we would desire to have. But we're asking, we're working hard, and we're trying to get answers.
A couple quick questions regarding the monitoring wells. What are the parameters they're gonna be tested for, do you know?
No.
Okay. No, okay, so that's something that we probably should know, so, you mentioned Woodard and Kern. There are certain sensors out there now that are real-time. Could we use those, and then the data could be posted so people could even see it in real time? And everyone would know what's being tested and what the levels were.
Yeah,
So those are those questions. The other thing, to my understanding, is what we're looking at is here. So we have the plant located here. The Eel River Watershed is,
back this way.
yeah, okay, back up that way. That, as far as a nutrient model for all the nutrients, not just what's coming from the plant, but everything, that was not evaluated. Am I correct? I think so.
The nutrients that are entering into the Eel River basin and the Eel River proper, whether it's Russell Mill or the downstream flows, are in fact tested by David Gould, and there are a number of reports that are published and are online with the town.
So basically, when you analyze this, and I've done this over the past 30 years, you have a watershed, so the Eel River watershed. Everything that falls, think of it as a big bowl. Everything that falls in that bowl, water and any of the nutrients, so nutrients would be coming from wastewater, fertilizers, from stormwater, and even atmospheric deposition. There's a study done by Dr. Gom from MIT. I worked on some of it at UMass Lowell way back when. That's also coming in. So what you do is you take all of that information and you calculate the nutrient loads that are falling in there. It gives you a big number of like kilograms of nitrogen, per year or per hectare. That's like think of that as like an acre coming into the watershed. So then you take that number, and then you look at the natural vegetation. You can kind of figure out what might take some of that nutrient away, and then you get the real number, or a pretty good number, of what the nutrient load is. So it's not just a plant here, but it's the whole area that tells you what's coming into the Eel River. Secondly, certain areas are 303 delisted waters, which mean they're impaired. So we already have some of those areas. So what are they impaired with? Some of them are macrophytes, which are, we're talking about the secular plants, so like the type you typically see, not the small plankton, but they're benthic. They grow off the bottom. So one of them's fanwort, and it thrives on nitrate. So if you have a lot of nitrogen in the water, it grows. We already have that throughout, and that's what's listed in the 303 delisted water. So with this discharge, the harbor's already listed as a 303 D water as well. It goes out even around in front of Long Beach. So the water's already impaired. So what we're doing is we're taking out of one impaired water and we're putting it into another impaired water. So that's pretty much what we're doing. As far as the, you mentioned reverse osmosis. That would be excellent if they would do it. Reverse osmosis is very expensive. There are certain things, some of the things I was working on with Taunton River Desalinization Plant was looking at natural gas fuel cell. So take natural gas, and it's actually a chemical reaction, and it creates a lot of energy and hot water. It's much, much cheaper. Nobody's using it right now, something I figured out with another engineer, but that would cut the cost of reverse osmosis. I'd love to see that, because what we're going to find out as a community is that wastewater is going to be extremely expensive in the future. And we have a lot of development coming. I'd like to see some of these technologies used to cut the cost, because it's going to impact everybody's taxes. They're only going up. And that's what happened down the Cape as well. I have a house in Yarmouth, and we were saying, no, listen. Nobody listened. What happened? Now Cape Cod's spending $1.4 billion, and they don't have the money. So they have to go to the federal government. So these are things I'd like to see avoided here, because these are, we still have the house down there. When you go to the beach, you go to like Seagull Beach in Yarmouth, it's full of ulva, sea lettuce. It's the stuff you hold up and you can see through, it's green. It's an invasive, and it's taken over all the eelgrass beds. They don't have a lot of eelgrass, and it's nitrogen loving. So it just fills the area. They have to pull, is it weekly or bi-weekly? They pull in a large loader and they drive it down the beach and clean it up. I'm seeing it when I go on my runs on Long Beach, small amounts of it showing up. So we do want to get the nutrients out of the harbor, but what's the best way to do that? We really need something like reverse osmosis to clean the water, but it's very expensive. But if we don't pay for it now, it just keeps, it's exponential, what the cost is. It just keeps going up.
So just for the sake of time, I want to make sure that you guys are.
Yeah, we'll wrap up in another few minutes. There were a couple of questions here.
Just want you to clarify, the well testing that's going on is being done by the people who run the plant? The groundwater is being tested by the people who run the plant?
That's my understanding currently.
Okay. Does the committee have a problem with that, or?
I'm not aware of it being any different for any other wastewater treatment facility. It doesn't seem to be problematic given their license with the state.
Hampton, in reading the original E&F, there was other locations for discharge. One of the sites was to the west on the woodlot.
Right.
That would be outside the Eel River Watershed, cone of influence.
Yeah, one of the sites is back off of Samoset. I don't know.
I was actually referring to where
Yeah.
the large solar array is, right down in Camelot.
No, that's still in the, what I did just is I backed out on this diagram. These are, the white lines are sub-basin boundaries for the various watersheds. That doesn't mean that they're flowing the sub-basins, but it just means that think of it as a catchment basin, a bowl. Water goes from Great South into Boot Pond, down around, and then back up through the Eel River, through the old cranberry bogs, into Russell Mill right there at here's Long Pond Road, and then on down. So this, from the top, if you will, of Pine Hill, along here, all the way down, picking up, this is Clark Road, picking up most of Pine Hill, the high school and Middle South, I'm sorry, the South Middle School. All of this is in the core Eel River Basin. That's for surface water. When you go underground, unless, like I said, there are clay layers or other things, it flows just straight downhill.
So just to
Lauren,
follow
was
up,
your question was, I think, when this came back from the state, they wanted the town, the engineers to study other locations.
correct.
Right.
I think your question is,
Would it be better if it was further west than where it now is infiltrated in the park, is one question. And my follow-up question is, rather than discharging this phosphorus-rich water into the groundwater, into an isolated, in a more concentrated location, theoretically, what if it was used for irrigation over a larger period where plants would be beneficial for irrigation, and therefore take the nitrogen out and allowing much more natural distributed water infiltration over a bigger area, so that you're actually recreating a more natural recharge of the aquifer and concentrate. I say that because I'm the direct abutter with the 160 acres, and there may be a solution here that no one's thought of, in that we might be able to, that discharge might actually be a valuable resource, and could be used in a much more efficient way to create a much more pure recharge to the aquifer and not create the bulge that would be created from directly discharging 1 million gallons directly into the
I'll let
watershed.
Hampton-
I'm just floating that out as just a concept, because
Right.
we're in the process of master planning and thinking,
Yep.
and how can we work with the existing infrastructure in Plymouth and create solutions for everyone.
Yeah, I appreciate that feedback, Lauren. I'll let Hampton jump in on this too, but there are two things that I wanted to respond to on that. The first is that one of the things that I want you folks to know, everyone, is that the wastewater division has committed to us that regardless of how this moves forward, They are exploring and plan to implement tertiary treatment with the existing plant in its current operation. So that means they're gonna add additional treatments to the wastewater before it's discharged, so that it further suppresses any nutrients that are found in the water when it is ultimately released into either the ocean or into the beds, and therefore has less of an environmental impact to our watershed. Second, I have begun exploring those conversations with the town, Loring, to see if perhaps this could be a revenue stream for the community, so that we can take some of that water, sell it to, irrigation companies, landscaping companies. I know that there are even, this is disgusting that I learned this, but there are even ski mountains that will purchase wastewater in order to fill their artificial snow machines. So we're
That explains the conditions.
yeah, they're shitty, right? Yeah. So
Wondering, let's go.
Wear a mask when you hit face first.
I broached those conversations. It's not really common here in New England. You see it more out west where there's water scarcity, but it's certainly something that we're exploring. And I don't know if you want to say anything further.
Yeah, what we're looking for is to balance risk, and benefit. Some of the things that we also need to consider is, remember I had the flow field up there. How many private wells are in the flow field? Those are things that we need to look at and give serious consideration, as well as the septic systems that might be flooded. So there is a lot left to do in what we're being, but we want to be thorough, and we're willing to come out and talk as this progresses to various community groups.
So moving forward.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I know you have to.
Yeah. So what happens from this point forward is the group needs to make a recommendation to the select board as to whether or not we should pursue this permitting change. That's going to be a much longer process than just hearing all these presentations and making a recommendation. I think what we'll see is, as Hampton mentioned, sometime in April we'll receive the draft EIR. Most likely we'll need to submit some supplemental information. There'll be a second iteration of that EIR before we reach the final EIR. Once we have that final EIR, at that point is when we are going to decide whether or not we want to proceed with a permitting process. So I think we'll get the draft in April. I'm happy to share it, Mark, even if you want to put it on your website. It'll end up being on the wastewater division's website. If you want to link to it or throw it up yourself, I'm happy to provide that to you folks. Most likely the committee is going to be asked to endorse it, which they could say no to, but the town will look for endorsement from the committee to move forward, and then a further endorsement of the permit. Again, as I mentioned earlier in the presentation, that could manifest as a no, a yes, or a yes, but you also have to do this. So we still got a long way to go. I think by the time May rolls around, the committee will kind of be dormant for a little bit while the state's doing their work with the EIR and permitting materials. But as soon as we have more information, I'm happy to come back out here and have Hampton present to you what it means.
What do you see as the possible dates for making a recommendation to the board of selectmen?
I think that depends on how quickly things move after the draft EIR is submitted.
Do you have any kind of idea, like, could be as early as this or as late as that?
It could be as early as a couple of months, it could be as late as a year, I think is what we determined. When we initially entered into this, we envisioned it as being about an 18-month process.
And that was August of last year,
Yeah.
So now, do you have to close, with the open meeting,
Yes.
do you have to close that? And can I ask, once it's closed, I know there are some CAC members here, they can They don't all have to scatter.
Yeah, well, I'm not afraid of you folks, but I'm gonna duck right out of here because my 6-year-old, my wife, just pulled up in that red Pathfinder. So,
Smart man.
I will say this: if you folks want to talk to me at all, if you want to pull out your cell phones, I'm happy to give you my direct cell phone number. It's 774-404-4464. I see it's being written down over here, so please reach out to me directly. My email is also golden@plymouth-ma.gov. So no reason that you shouldn't reach out to me if you need anything. The other members, since a quorum won't be present, you're more than welcome to have open discussions with folks.
Great.
And if there are any other questions?
Just one last one. You folks meet the last.
Yep, we meet the
Monday?
last Monday of each month in the rope walk room at Town Hall at 6 p.m.
Fantastic. And any other CAC members who would like to make themselves available, if you want to raise your hand, if you want to skedaddle, that's fine as well, just in case people have other questions. So.
Well, our business having been concluded, I will call to close the March 2nd Citizens Advisory Committee meeting. Thank you all for having me here, and as I said, be in touch.